to SPEARATICS by Sideline Sports Network. We are bringing a fun, just not one of those episodes really. There's confidence, but there's not confidence. There's worry, but we're confident at the same time. It's kind of weird. It's going to be one of those episodes. But we're going to talk pregame to FSU versus the Wolf Pack of just, I don't have much respect for the way that these gentlemen play the game of football. Seen a lot of chop blocks last year that weren't called. Seen a lot of, a lot of cheap shots that were thrown. So I'm not a Wake Forest fan. Obviously, I'm not a fan of the way that they play on the field. They are coached very well. They do have a decent coach. I'm not going to take that away from what they do have, but I'm not a fan of Wake Forest. I dislike them just as much as I dislike Clemson, and obviously the only two teams that I could care less for than those two are Miami and the Gators. But we're going to talk about how Florida State can go into where exactly is NC State's? It's North Carolina, but what's the town
Raleigh.
that it's in? Raleigh. So we're going to talk about how we can go into Raleigh and come out with a win, and we're also going to talk about how we can go into Raleigh and come out with a loss. So there'll be a very back and forth opinion. We'll see how it goes. First off, I want to let everybody know we appreciate you joining. We appreciate you coming to listen to the show or watch the show, however you're connecting with us. And second of all, I would like to let you know that this is brought to you by Game Day Vodka, the official vodka for FSU University. And they will be sponsoring our what looks like it's going to be a huge tailgate against Clemson with the man down at the bottom right-hand corner. He and I are now combining this what looks like might be a much bigger tailgate than I anticipated with the amount of people that wrote me. He said, I did challenge him last week. I challenged fans last week that I wanted it to be bigger than New Orleans, and we didn't know if that was possible because of how big James's tailgate was in New Orleans. So I think they took it personal, and we actually might get more people. So we'll see. Right now, there's a bunch of talk. When more tickets are bought, then I'll say whether we're going to beat New Orleans or not. But we'll jump right into how we think we can, or what we think this game is going to look like against NC State. Taylor, as always, start us off with what you're seeing and why you think Florida State, or what Florida State needs to do.
Well, let's go ahead and start with the offensive side of the ball with NC State. I think that's very important to kind of prioritize in involving their system. You got a veteran quarterback with Devin Leary, who's probably one of the better ACC quarterbacks, if not one of the best at this point. Jordan Travis is going to give him a run for his money, and Sam Hartman is as well. But just I think they're a short to intermediate passing game. Thayer Thomas is a guy you have to look at, especially with his 270 yards this season. You got guys there that are being successful. They utilize a lot of their receivers, but they lost Emeka Emezi last season, who was their leading receiver. And you're trying to find ways to be successful. And really, the only time that you really had a problem with Thomas was back in the 2020 matchup when he had 11 receptions for 135 yards and 2 touchdowns, specifically because our linebackers weren't really able to get in coverage. Last season, they did a better job, especially with all the people out with the flu. And you just saw a lot more aggression trying to stop Thayer Thomas early and often. And when you look at last season's matchup, we had Trent Penix, who was a tight end that they had. He didn't really have that much production this season, so that is something to watch out for. But he did take advantage of Florida State last season. He had 3 receptions for 97 yards and a touchdown. Now, the thing is with Devin Leary is he is really a short to intermediate yard passer, like I said before. He has a 6.6 yards per completion with his passing game. And just to put that in perspective, Jordan Travis, he has 9.4 yards per attempt. Then you look at Sam Hartman, he had 8.9 yards per attempt. So those guys bring up the third and longs, everything like that, to that Florida State was kind of struggling in to stop that. Now, NC State doesn't really do that as much. The running game is not really as effective. And we also thought that with Wake Forest, but Christian Turner and some of those other guys were actually being able to be effective in the run game. Now, when you look at their offensive line, I think it's a decent offensive line. I think you're able to generate some offense there with that, being able to block some of that up. But the problem is their defense. Their defense is the real key in this game. They're an elite unit at this point, but they don't cause a lot of those sacks. They've only got 7 sacks on the season. So that is something you have to watch out for. Now, they do have a lot of tackles for loss, which you have to kind of watch out for. But Drake Thomas is a guy you really need to monitor in this game. He's got 32 sacks, one of the better linebackers in the ACC. And you just really have to watch out for some of their defensive schemes. They run a lot of 3-3-5, and I think it's a lot of mixed looks that you're going to get, especially on the blitz packages that they have. Now, a lot of Florida State fans, they're talking about the defensive back that was ejected for targeting, Derek Pitts, who is actually one of their top corners, and he's going to be out for the first half of the Florida State contest. Now, he is their top cornerback with 24 total tackles, and he is an effective piece. Now, who will kind of they rely on in this kind of system? Cyrus Fagan, former Florida State standout that was there, transferred over there, could be a guy you look out for. And will a guy like Corey Durden, another defensive tackle from Florida State, be able to be effective in the rushing the passer and being able to neutralize some of that run game? The problem with Florida State is they don't have any defensive tackles, especially with Fabian Lovett. You're having to bring in guys like Malcolm Ray and Jared Jackson and guys like that to step up, and you're just trying to figure out what you got in those pieces. And just overall, I think Florida State is going to have to do a really, really good job in this game. The one glaring stat that I saw in this game, though, was that Florida State in their red zone offense is 111th in the FBS in red zone offense, which is not really something that you thought Florida State was going to be able to do, considering their hot streak last season, the red zone offense. But the good news is with the NC State defense is they're actually last in the FBS in red zone defense. So that is something to kind of point your finger to in regards to being successful in the red zone. And maybe that is something that Florida State could exploit. Some of that is because Ryan Fitzgerald missed a couple of field goals. Some of that's because we had a couple of fumbles that were unnecessary. But just overall, I think Florida State could exploit that. And I think you're going to see Jordan Travis being able to utilize his legs a little bit more. You haven't been able to see that much this season. DJ Uiagalelei for Clemson, he actually had 73 yards and 2 touchdowns against NC State this past week. And I think that's something you can really exploit. And I think Travis is finally going to get his legs back into the swing of things.
Well, I will add this. So that here's some positive to this on what I think. We should have Robert Scott back for our offensive line this week. Don't know if he's going to be 100% as far as he already doesn't play 75% of the snap count. But if we can get him back better than 50% of the snap count, that brings a vital piece back to the offensive line to where y'all saw last week against Wake Forest. They were getting pressure on Jordan. They were causing him to fumble. There were some missed assignments as far as blocks go on the quarterback keeper. So I think with bringing Robert Scott back, it's going to really help the offensive line on protection, especially on run protection. Robert Scott does a great job in run protection. It's not that he does bad in pass protection, but he is slightly better in run protection. I think that this is a game that our running backs have to step up in. We have to utilize the run game, and we have to execute the run game to come out with a win against North Carolina State. But we are going to have to utilize the big man that has had a couple, has one big blowout game that's been great, but we're going to have to utilize him pretty well in Johnny Wilson. He creates a great mismatch with just about any DB. Them being without their best in the first half, I look for Johnny Wilson to have a huge first half because we're going to need that. And a guy that I would like to see that maybe they take their attention off of because Johnny Wilson's on the field is Malik McLean, because I think it's in his last name, McLean. And number 11, the guy we had all this hope for, we thought was going to end up being a star wide receiver at Florida State. I think he needs to step up in this game in particular and, kind of get his number called as much as possible. and continue to watch. The other guy that I would say that I want to see a little bit more in this game, maybe with some end around stuff and misdirection, is Deuce Spann. I think he's got enough speed to get to the outside to do some really great things for Florida State, get us set up in short, yard situations to where we have got to eliminate the penalties. We cannot be 1st and 15 because we're getting false starts and stuff to that nature. So we really, really need to establish discipline on first down. We cannot shoot ourselves in the foot and get penalties. James, I'll jump to you. There was already a question asked. What player do you think on the offense needs to step up for us to beat NC State and could be a key factor to us winning against NC State?
I'm going to say Trey Benson. Trey Benson is the leader in the ACC with 6.8 yards a carry. One of the leading running backs with tackles after contact in the nation. You just got to have the running game going, in particular him. Trayshawn Ward is going to give us what he gives us, but Trey Benson has to be that guy that's going to wear it down. One thing you'll hear me preach, if you follow me with my Jaguars coverage or if you follow me with this, is TOP, baby. Everybody loves top. And AFOC. It's accelerated feet on contact, and top is time of possession. That's the best fringe you can have to your defense. We did a terrible job of in the last game, and what we did a terrible job late in the LSU game, as well as and I think once we got it corrected against Louisville, is playing complementary football. Our special teams is kind of struggling right now, but our defense gets put in situations where it's very difficult for them. So the best way to protect your defense is to protect the ball and keep it on your side. Score, obviously, but you got to press the other team and score at the same time. So I think Trey Benson is going to be key and critical to that. And I like what you said. Malik McClain is about the only wide receiver left to have a breakout game, right? But I like him. I like him. I like what he does. I think we're going to be able to attack them vertically a little bit better this game.
Well, I think the biggest thing that Florida State needs to do, and one of the fans had wrote a comment about it. Well, we've got to spread this defense out because they will like running that 3-3-5, and the only way that you expose that as best as possible is to spread them out as much as you can. So whether it be 3 wide, 4 wide, bringing that tight end package to where McDonald, makes a chip block and it's a dump to either Toa Philly or because that's the other guy that I think is going to have a big game, or we are going to need him to have a big game. I think Trey Benson wearing them down is great. I think that's definitely needed. And that should open up things for Toa Philly on those swing passes. I think we're going to need that a lot in this game because with the weird blitz packages that the 3-3-5 brings, especially the way NC State does it, we're going to need to get rid of the ball quick. So, and what better way to get it to a Toa Philly or to a Deuce Spann or a Micah Pittman? If you can get rid of it to one of those guys that can make someone miss, then you could be taking 1 for 6 real quick. Chip, I'm going to ask you the same question. Who, and you can make this defense or offense, who do you think needs to have one of their better games, if not best game of the season, for Florida State to come out with a win?
Well, I'm gonna go with what James said. It's got to be Trey Benson. He's got to wear down this NC State front. You didn't see it last week. He looked lethargic, is the word that comes to mind. He is known for breaking the first 2 or 3 guys weren't bringing him down before the weight game, and it's just ever since the opening kickoff when he muffed the kickoff, he is just like his head wasn't in it. He has got to show up for this game. He's got to be the one that gets a good 10, 15 carries where he wears down and punishes his defense.
Well, Taylor, I'm going to let you, kind of touch on this a little bit, but what I want to see, I'm not too worried about our offense in this game. I think we can score with NC State. I think we can outscore NC State if our defense will wrap up and make tackles and quit throwing shoulders at guys or missing the open tackle. Taylor, what do you think defensively Florida State needs to do to contain these short passes that NC State's going to go after us with?
Well, a lot of times people are talking about these injuries that we've had, and not many people talk about the Tatum Bethune shoulder injury that he's going through right now. He's basically only playing with one arm at this point. So a lot of times when you're playing linebacker, you have to be able to get open those intermediate and short passes, especially those quick slant routes with Thayer Thomas and crossing routes. You just have to be more efficient. And when you have a guy like DJ Lundy who struggles a little bit in coverage here and there, Mari Gainer's not the best either, and he's coming off of injury. You're hopefully going to see him on the edge a little bit more. Kalen DeLoach, you're hopefully going to see him kind of monitor the middle of the field. And there's going to be a lot of times where those linebackers are going to have so much pressure on being able to be successful, and you have to wrap up in those tackles. Like you said, you can't have a lot of these missed tackle opportunities because NC State's going to make you pay. They're a veteran team, just like Wake Forest was last week. So you're going to have to find a way to be able to be successful wrapping up. And even if it takes guys like Jamie Robinson, Akeem Dent coming down to blitz a little bit on the quarterback to get a little bit of pressure so those guys can wrap up a little bit more easier in the backfield, I think can be a really big help.
Definitely agreed. So Jazell Paul Riley made a comment. He said, against 3-3-5, you need to get in and out of the huddle, even go no huddle, get lined up, use hard counts. The best way to beat the defense is to get them to show where their pressure is coming from, attack from there. I agree with that comment with a lot of depth, to be completely honest. Here's where NC State worries me the most. They're very well coached. They have a coach that knows how time management works. I do believe that there are more injuries to NC State than we all know at this point. I think there's a couple of guys banged up after this past weekend that they're not talking about, and I think that a couple of them is defensive players. I also think one or two of them is offensive linemen, because one that they're not talking about is I believe it was their right guard. He went out mid fourth quarter and he didn't come back in. So I'm not sure that guy's going to be 100% ready come this Saturday against Florida State. And again, Derek McClendon is inching his way to being better each game. I'm seeing it inch by inch. I need him to get off the ball and get to the quarterback so badly. Jared Verse hopefully is going to be, in this game more than he was against Wake Forest. I'm hoping to see him back to his normal self as much as can be. James, question about Kalen's going to do what Kalen does. We know that. How can we, or what does Florida State need to do linebacker-wise to help Kalen out? Because if Mari Gainer's back and he's on that edge and he sets the edge the way we need him to, does that help Kalen just take that off of his plate? Or what's the best thing to do to help Kalen with his game? Because I feel like he's there by himself a lot.
Well, the best way to protect your middle linebackers is to have push from your D tackles. You have to have – actually, we'll just go linebacker in general, especially when you're running the kind of – is it a 3-3 like with a shift, or is it a 4-2, whatever they want to call it? It all depends. But let's just say it's a 4-2. The best thing you can do for your two inside linebackers is to literally have the 4D linemen command double teams. Actually, one of them is going to be free, and that just makes sure your guys are able to run. When you're able to tag on up to the linebacker and you got the big guy, the 330-pound ugly blocking the 200 and, LeBron maybe 210 right at this point in his life, that's not optimal. So you gotta that's how you protect him. But having an Amari Gainer be able to come in does give you a spell because he has experience. And I think what Lundy and what Omar Graham are lacking right now are true playmaker type experience right now. So even then, he can't, like, Kalen can't take, or Bethune can't afford to take a break, because when you take a break in these big games, it's such a big drop off. You got to have that drop off at least in half, and I think you'll be able to see the level of play and the defense get better. But if somehow Fabian Lovett can, press through and play this game, or you can see Jared Jackson play to levels that he kind of did against Louisville a little bit, and we've seen flashes of it, but we can see the consistency, and I think you can see the defense get better. But that's really what this defense is lacking, is what its strength was D-tack, was interior. Injuries has made that a little bit less of a strength at this point.
I will ask this, James, and I know you just asked that last question and kind of made a thought process about our defensive tackles. We got Fabian Lovett that's being out for an extended period of time, and you're trying to find more weapons and more useful pieces on that defensive tackle room. And Dennis Briggs, and I talked about this in a Twitter space a couple of days ago, actually last night, talking about Dennis Briggs sliding over potentially from defensive end to more of a defensive tackle while Fabian Lovett is being sidelined for a little bit. Do you think that is a possibility for him to more play that hybrid role rather than, because he has struggled a little bit more in the defensive end box position that he's been trying to kind of bolster together? Do you think that's a possibility, or do you think it's just more so he's just going to stick to more defensive end with that point?
I mean, I guess I don't really know. I guess, that's really all dependent upon him. Obviously, that's that's not really answering the question, but what I can answer the question is, in a way to let people understand that is like two entirely different worlds. So tackle is, end is you're one-on-one with a tackle. So it's less about true physicality and more about finesse, speed. You can get away with working a combo of moves, and you're, to be honest with you, your best left tackles, unless they're just massive like Icky from North Carolina State was, are really out there playing power forward and taking the charge. You're really just setting your feet and then making the guy come to you, and you shoot your hands to save your life, but you're going to absorb his shot and then run your feet with it so that you don't get a holding penalty. Now, when you bump down, those guys are a little bit thicker, a little bit wider. To use a funny story, which I love to use these, is I used to kill board drills, right? I could crush a linebacker in board drills. And I got so good that even my freshman year, I decided to say Montre Holland, who ended up playing for the Saints and the Cowboys for years. We called him Big Swole. I said, man, Swole, you ain't nothing. You going up against them Ducks, man. I bet I can get you. He punched me in my chest so hard. Like, it's just the violence and how they shoot their hands in that position. It's just a whole different world. Like, you can get upright, use your hands, dance a little bit. And even I saw DeMarcus Walker try to do this a little bit in the league and in college. And he's like, nah, man, give me back in the end. But I think, though, if you don't get this situation solved, you're going to have to throw everything at this. So, look, who would have thought Brendan Gant would be serviceable at linebacker coming from safety? So, they've got to get not pass rush. They've got to get consistent push from the D tackle position. And what I mean is just literally reestablish the offensive line 1 to 2 yards in the backfield, whether it's the run or it's the pass. And if they're doing that, that's when your Derek McClendons of the world can get closer to the quarterback, and your Jared Verses, who people are going to have to account for this guy. They're going to have to run away from this guy, which literally leads them to the other defensive ends as well. So, but yeah, that's my thoughts on trying to make that move.
Chip, I'll go with you first on this one, and Taylor, I want you to rebuttal. Should we be worried about the type of play we get out of Marion Cooper and Jarian Jones this week? Should we be worried about these two back there?
With the short passing game, yes. Last week they did a lot of where they just didn't turn and look for the ball. And these NC State receivers, like Taylor said before we went on the air, there's not a lot of them with a lot of receptions, a lot of yards, but we don't need a no-name we haven't heard from coming out having a breakout game against us. They're going to have to set the tempo with just putting one on his back
Taylor, what is your response on? I mean, I personally look. I'm a huge fan of Jerry Jones.
Mhm.
Love the kid to death. He has battled injury through injury, especially last year. You know, he went back to the locker room against Wake Forest this past game with another hand injury. But he's expected to play, according to what I've heard. I want to see more press from our DBs and our corners. We seem to give so much cushion, and we're trying to be this red zone defense, like allow you to get the 10, 12, 8 yards, through first till we get to the 30-yard line per se. Why is that? I want to see more pressure coming from the defense.
Yeah, and you talked about with Jerry and Jones. I mean, when he's healthy, when he's motivated, when he is at himself, he's not a bad cornerback. He's a solid, average ACC cornerback. When he is unmotivated, he is hurt, and it's pretty bad. It's 30 PFF grade bad. It's one of the worst in the ACC in terms of production. Same thing with Greedy Vance. When he is in his own headspace, that's fine. Marion Cooper has not lived up to his preseason expectations at this point. Fall camp, right after that, he had a little bit of a nagging injury, and it's kind of alluded to the part of this season where he's not really been himself. Kevin Knoll has been a guy that's been okay at times. He had that one big pivotal interception against Louisville. Just overall with the cornerbacks, there's going to be a lot of crossing routes. And a lot of times with NC State's offense coordinator, he loves to do the quick passing game, but he also likes to spread you out wide. So a lot of times with those crossing routes and those slant routes, you have to have a lot of communication. Will Florida State's DBs be able to communicate effectively? Not really sure, because this is an experienced group. So we'll definitely see how that pans out. But I think that's one important aspect you kind of have to focus on.
James, do you feel like let's try to change the scenario? I understand what the question is that's being asked, but I kind of want to change the first part of this question. What does Florida State have to do as a whole to come in and win this game defensively? For them to get defensive stops, what is it that Florida State needs to do better than they've been doing, especially against Wake Forest with the short pass game?
Well, I think one of the things we got to realize is that NC State and Wake Forest are two completely different offenses and different goals. And what really woke me up to this is I was doing, obviously during the season, we all have different places that we go. And I have a good friend, Mark Rogers. He brought an NC State analyst on. And what NC State wants to do is actually our strength. They want to throw the ball down the field. They just haven't really done a great job of that yet this year. So what we have to do is take away the run, which we didn't do a great job of against Wake Forest, regardless of the reasons why. You got to take away the run, and you've got to put pressure on the guy. When a guy wants to throw the ball downfield, that's giving you 3 to 4 seconds as opposed to the 2.5 to 3. So again, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. A second is an eternity when you're in that world. But I do think that bodes well for our guys, because that will give you opportunities to bring more pressure, bring more exotic looks. And something that I did, and I hope that's where they go to. But if I'm watching film, I'm doing what's been successful to the quick game, because for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's because we rely so heavily on Bethune and Kalen DeLoach in the passing game to be able to scrape, but we take away outside leverage as opposed to taking away the inside. And I want to make them throw the sideline pass, to use the sideline as a defender when I have athletic corners. In particular, athletic corners that aren't all Antonio Cromartie's height, and they're playing against taller receivers. I want to force the very, very difficult throw to where at least the guy, not a wide receiver, has to worry about getting their feet in bounds. They have to worry about high pointing the ball and worry about getting out of bounds. So that gives you an extra step. So that's what I hope that they don't do. But I think we have to let them give us the opportunity to be athletic. And I think if we're athletic, we have a chance. And that's why you can't get caught up in Wake Forest lost to Clemson or Clemson lost. Like, if we give an opportunity to match athlete for athlete, we have a chance to win. If we're playing a scheme or a system, as they say with boxing, styles make matchups. And that's where things are just like, this could be, for us, the closest thing to just 2 feet in an inner tube and just throwing punches until somebody tires out, which I think gives us a better chance to win more ball games.
Absolutely. Taylor, look, I spoke on this the last episode that we had about Grady Vance. Y'all, trust me, I seen the play in person, then went and rewatched the game. And yes, Grady Vance got mossed. Without a doubt, it happened. But I don't think that defines the young man as a player. I think that even Deion Sanders was mossed a couple of times in his career, even at Florida State. Not comparing the two. I'm just stating that even the greatest corners get mossed from time to time. That wide receiver was much stronger than him in that play because he snatched the ball from him, over the top of him. But should we lose all hope in what Grady Vance brings to the table? Or is there a certain package that you would like to see as far as the DBs go that give us more confidence on maybe interceptions and getting turnovers as the defense?
I mean, when you look at it with Grady Vance, everybody's going to compare, who won the trade between Jarvis Brownlee and Grady Vance? I don't really think that's a fair question because Brownlee is a starting cornerback and Grady Vance is a rotational piece. Both of them have their faults. Both of them are highly aggressive in man, and they're a liability in zone. So it just is what it is. I mean, Grady Vance is probably, I think his overall PFF grade is like a 45, which is not good. Not really terrible, but it's not good. And you're trying to find ways for him to be successful. You have to rotate some of those cornerbacks in. Will you see more of an AZ Thomas come in more so instead of a Vance at all times? Maybe so. Not saying that Vance is a terrible player, and he's going to get his snap count, just like some other cornerbacks in the rotation. But just overall, I think Florida State's got to do a better job in being able to fight for the ball, being able to be there for the ball and playing the ball. And I think that's Florida State's problem. You can go all the way back to the Notre Dame game against Jack Cohn at quarterback. I don't think he's an efficient passer, but he looked like John Elway out there throwing the football in Tallahassee. And you don't need that to happen with Devin Leary, especially when they're going to be tight passing windows. So, I think the DBs are solid, but I understand the limitations that they have, and I understand you probably need to get a couple more transfers this offseason to kind of offset some of your losses that you have so far this season. But I think overall, I think they can be able to get it done. I just don't know if they can in this game just because of the experience that they have at wide receiver.
So, Chip, obviously with what I'm about to say, either or that works, you'll be fine with. Do you think Florida State needs to establish the run or more establish the vertical game to beat NC State?
Well, really and truly, I think we need both. Jordan Travis has to be a threat with his legs in this game. We have to see the RPO at its finest. Johnny Wilson has to get involved. McClain, Pittman, Deuce. We're going to have to see every receiver play a role in this game. But honestly, when it comes down to it, you're not going to be able to throw effectively if you don't have the defense scared of the run. And that's where Jordan Travis has to step in. And we haven't seen it this year. I want to say he only has like 18 carries so far this year. He's got to keep the defense honest.
And I will add this, Chris. I know you asked Chip about this too. And the thing with NC State is everybody talks about the statistic of, Florida State's only allowed, 3 plays of 30-plus yards. It's first in the ACC. They've been very efficient. But NC State's only allowed 5 plays of 30 yards. They're 24th in the country. So you don't really get a whole lot of chunk plays out of them either. They're 15th in run defense. I mean, there's a lot of successful things they do defensively, and it's just something you really have to worry about. This is a tough defense to go against.
The only thing that and this is where it's kind of weird too, because everybody always challenges Florida State by who have you played. So we see LSU is a lot better than what people want to give credit for. Louisville, when they get it all figured out, is a good ball club. Like there's you're just a hater if you don't believe that. Boston College beat this Louisville team that we kind of struggled with, but we beat Boston College down. I'm not going to pretend about Duquesne being an amazing matchup. And, obviously we played Wake Forest, and we still have all these statistics. But we quote these statistics, but I have to say that Florida State's schedule is exponentially better than what North Carolina State's schedule has been up to this point. I mean, you've got UConn, who I don't even – is UConn still FBS or did they move back down to FCS? So I'm not sure. But they got Charleston Southern, who I know is FCS, Texas Tech, who – and East Carolina, who basically are –
They should have won.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are the games that they have played in. And while they have all been outside of the Clemson game, been fairly – and Clemson game against them, and then UConn, in NC State's favor, have all been relatively close. So, I mean, it's kind of like a thing where we have better quarterback play. And DJ Ukulele, however he says, they played better, but we have much better quarterback play. We have right now and I hate Pro Football Focus. I'm going to be honest. I'm only using it because it helps us. But we have the best wide receiver core in the nation, or one of the best ones per Pro Football Focus. We have some things that I don't think that they've necessarily been able to see. And even the Clemson team that they've been playing is not a Clemson team that we've known in the past. They are winning because they are extremely talented. But this is not as good a Clemson product as we've seen over the last decade. So I'm not negating what NC State can do. I think NC State is going to be really, really good. It's going to be a challenge. But like how we're in the middle of our 3-game stretch where everybody is kind of work, they're in the middle of a Clemson, us, Syracuse. Then they get kind of a little bit of break with a Virginia Tech, who we don't know what they're doing, and then they play Wake Forest. So they're in the middle of where they have to they're going to be in a blender for a second. So they're going to go through it here. So I just think that's something to really take into consideration as well. I just think highly of this team and the way they've battled and competed. I just really think that sometimes also being on the road has a way of focusing you more than when you're at home. Because you have no choice. There's nothing else to do.
Yeah, and you talked about it before. Like the PFF grades are kind of a deceiving kind of thing.
Right.
PFF, according to them, Florida State has the 3rd best offensive line, and that's not the 3rd best offensive line in the country.
I want to use that one, but I don't believe it. I can't. I'm not that. I don't want to be a homer.
And I mean, Jazz Turntine had a pretty rough game, and Darius Washington did too. You talked about it before, Chris, that Robert Scott has a chance to come back in this game and be successful. He may be on – you don't want to injure him and further injure everything else. But, Chip, do you think that's an important development in this game with the offensive line, especially with Robert Scott and maybe a Jazz Turntine on the right side? And you got your interior guys, but do you think they can be successful up front?
If we can get just 50% of snaps out of Robert Scott, I think that's a huge, huge plus in our favor. The offensive line, that's been one of the most hardest hit positions we've had this year with injuries. I mean, we lost our starting center before the season even started. But, I mean, you have to be impressed with the grit and just the determination they've had so far. But being impressed, you also got to show results. And as far as your PFF, them being the 3rd best offensive line, I think a lot of that's got to do with Jordan Travis's play.
Here's what I want to piece together. I told people that I'm real back and forth with this game. If we get, and this is based off of body language, not wins and losses. The way we played against Wake Forest the first half was flat. We didn't seem to be focused. I've told everybody why I thought we weren't focused. I'm not going to keep bashing that horse, but we weren't focused at all. Now, if we can get the Florida State team that was focused against LSU, where we were penalized very little, where we played against Louisville and was penalized very little. I believe the team that makes the least amount of mistakes in this game, and I do mean by penalties, wins this game. With this RPO style that Norvell runs at Florida State, I love it to death. When he first came here with it, I was worried. Now that I'm seeing more of his guys, a little bit more depth at the offensive line, we bring in Trey Benson, where I think James and Chip are bringing up a great point as far as Benson needs to beat down and wear down the defense. I agree to that, but I think in this particular game, we need to almost be a thorn in their side the entire game with these short passes, the dumps in the flat to the Toa Phillies or to Cam McDonald. There was a particular play last week where Jordan threw. It was right before half, before we tried the 29-yard field goal we missed. But the pass that was to Cam McDonald, and he didn't even get turned around. Is Cam just like in no man's land, or because he sees two guys covering him that he just knows the ball's not coming to him? Because without a doubt, Jordan missed a wide open wide receiver just to the right of that in the corner. He missed. I don't know who it was, but it was wide open. But I still think Cam could have came down with the pass if he just turned around. I think the ball hit him on the shoulder or something to that nature. I was literally getting hot dogs when this happened from my kids. But nonetheless, I want to see – I said it last week, and I don't know if y'all agree with me or not, but Jordan Travis's passes in the first half of last week's game, he was off to me. He was throwing wide. He was throwing high. It just seemed really, really off to me. And then the wide receivers, there was a couple of plays where I think they just ran the wrong route, because where the ball was thrown to, people were like, where, fans were around me, where's Jordan throwing to? And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, in Jordan's mind, they're supposed to cut, now. And everybody sees it, they think you're always going to have a wide receiver standing there with his hands open. We can't wait till that point to throw a pass, guys. The pass is thrown before the guy even makes his break. That's how football works. Not they're standing there waiting for it. That's different in a bubble screen. Yes, all he's doing is turning with his hands open. But when he's 6, 8, 10 yards down the field, if you're seeing a guy standing there like this, that's not good. That ball should not be going to him. So my question is does Florida State pull their confidence level back up by making these short throws with Jordan, getting him? Here's my thing. You don't play against Louisville, and I think at one point Jordan was 12 for 12 or 13 for 13, and then he comes in and can't make the first 8 passes against Wake Forest. I get there's two different teams there. I get there's two different, styles of defense being played against you, but you have got to notice that from game to game, there was a completely different style of play going on. We were off completely in the first half against Wake Forest to where all cylinders were fired against Louisville in just short time. You know what I'm saying? Like in just short time, we switched off. So my thing is I think the right team shows up against NC State. I think that Florida State comes in and beats NC State on the road because of – and I was going to bring this up later on, but James brought it up, and it's perfect. Who in the hell has NC State played that's the state that they've played anybody to our stature? Even in offensive line with us being beat up, what offensive line was better than ours that they played? Possibly Clemson, okay, but Clemson beat them. Clemson also shot themselves in the foot throughout the majority of that game to keep NC State into the game. Mm-hmm. So if Florida State eliminates the penalties, we do not create, getting behind the first down mark at the start of every possession, we win this game, in my opinion, handsomely. But let's say that we continue and we play a little bit poorly, or we're a little bit disgusting in the first half again. I still think Florida State has what we need to go out and win the game. I think we still have, in my opinion, offensive-wise, we have better athletes than they do. a lot of guys say wide receivers against wide receivers, offensive line against offensive line, quarterback against quarterback. Because James brought it up. We have better quarterback play than Iguangale or whatever his name is at Clemson. There's no doubt that Jordan's playing ball better than Clemson's quarterback right now. There's no question. So if we have what tools are necessary to win, why are we so worried about, and I'm not saying we as in this group, I'm saying we as a fan base, we get one loss against Wake Forest, a good Wake Forest team, a great coached Wake Forest team, and now Florida State, we're going to lose the rest of the games of the season. We might beat the Raging Cajuns. I've heard multiple people say this. I'm like, off of one loss, we went from being 4-0 to now we're buying into everything that everybody has said about us. Might I add that LSU is now in the top 25 and we beat them? Wake Forest was ranked 22 and we were ranked 23 when we lost to them. Louisville will end up being ranked, in my opinion, at the end of the season. There's multiple teams that we played that are better than what people are giving them credit for, but everybody's like NC State has played, they beat so-and-so. They took Clemson down to the last, couple of plays. Clemson is not what they've been, man. Like, this is a fact. Clemson's not great. Clemson's not Clemson they were when they had whatever his name was, but blonde, Opie-looking dude, whatever his name is.
Trevor.
The Jaguars dude now. Y'all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm really confused we've never played NC State well, except for 2013. I can say we did decent then, but I think that this is the turnaround. I think we needed that loss against Wake Forest to be able to come and beat an NC State. Honest to God, I wouldn't trade losing to Wake Forest and beating NC State. I would rather lose to Wake Forest and beat NC State than it be vice versa. Because if we go in and we get handled by NC State, there's not a lot of confidence going into Clemson. So I hope we get the same energy. If Florida State pulls off this win against NC State, hope we get the same energy that we're going to go in and just terrorize Clemson the next week. I hope that that's just the idea of it. But Taylor, I see the things that you're bringing up, the worry where you're coming from, the short passing game. We're at NC State. I agree with all of those things. I do. I think that this isn't going to be a game that's handed to us. I think we're going to win by 30 points. I'm not saying that. But why is there so much worry that NC State is, just got what it takes to beat us? Why is it vice versa?
I mean, when you look at it, so NC State plays really well at home. They've won 13 straight home games. Their fifth longest active streak in college football right now. It's a place that we haven't really won. We're 4-6 in the last 10 matchups. The last time we won was 2016. And you know who was quarterback for NC State during that time? Ryan Finley. And I think he's a pretty decent comparison to their quarterback now with Devin Leary. I think they both do things pretty well. And I think that there are kind of similarities that you can kind of base off their game. Now, with Dave Doran, he is a very, very good coach. The roster is always pretty much coached up. But you also have to think about it, too. NC State's never had a 10-win season in their program history. So, there's been successes at NC State, and we have struggled there. But it's not like they're an elite ACC school. Everybody thought that this was going to be the year to kind of get back into the playoff picture. They thought Clemson was taking a downward spiral. They thought Florida State may win 6 or 7 games. We've heard it all. But, Florida State's coming to the Wake Forest game. They were 4-0. They lost a tough matchup against an experienced Wake Forest team. Not saying there is excuses because that game should have been won. They should have been a little bit better in the first half defensively and offensively. But just overall, it's a game that you need to worry about. But it's not the end of the world. It's not going into Death Valley at night with a Clemson team that's won 35 straight. There's bigger concerns than going to NC State right now at this moment, especially coming off of a 10-point loss to Clemson, which shouldn't even been a 10-point loss. It should have been a lot more than that.
Yeah. James, what do you think about so I'm going to throw this out there, and then y'all can go to it if you want. But I give Florida State the win in this game because I think we're fixing to come in playing with a chip on our shoulder. I think we're going to establish the run. I think we're going to I think Jordan's going to have one of his better games of the season. I personally think Florida State wins this game. It's going to be lower scoring. I think most of everybody's going to go for, but I think we win this game 31 to 20, 22, 24. Just depends on how that 17 margin goes. If they go for 3 or they got to go for a touchdown. But I think Florida State wins 31 to 24. I give us 7 points. James, touch on maybe if you got a score prediction, touch on it.
I'm going to go. I said 28-24 yesterday, but I'm going to go 28-17, Florida State. And again, it's a situation where if they do want to dink and dunk us, I think that bodes well. Or if they want to go deep, I mean, Dorian, I'm looking at his stat lines: 28 for 46, if I believe correctly. Wasn't overly great. He hasn't performed well. Hopefully, this won't be the game he catches fire. I think defensively, there's some things that we can. I mean, offensively, there's some things that we can exploit and do to their defense that very few people outside of last weekend have been able to consistently do. We just have to and I think Coach Norvell, bigger than the team, is going to learn as I like to stress to people, he is only in year 7, year 3, the start of year 3. At a big-time program, being both coordinator and head coach. I think he's going to learn on the fly, and when he's got it going and it's churning and all cylinders are clicking, it is contagious, and everybody kind of goes along with it. But I think win, lose, or draw, we as a fan base can't be that we are being critical and critiquing and breaking down. That is natural. You do that when you're breaking down film, whether you win or lose. You have to find what you did well and try to applaud that, and find out what you did bad and try to correct that. If you have a film where everything is flawless, you can't really get better from that. But I think as a fan base, we're just so gun-shy from never having lost. This losing stuff is still brand new to us. For most of my life, we won. Outside of the last 5 years. So you got to remember, we didn't have a losing season for 40 years in a row. 36 straight bowl games, if I remember correctly. So, and the nature of the world and how things are, I will say from this, we should learn a little bit from our rivals. Don't quite be like them, but learn a little bit from our rivals and we have the best record. We are the best team. We can see things trending in the right direction. None of us thought that this was going to be a college football playoff team. If you did, I would have told you to go have some game day vodka and go sit your ass in the corner somewhere and go relax.
Right.
So a loss isn't the end of the world. It's how you lost. Now, this is where I will panic. Is if we go up there and we get mud stopped. If we get treated like how we treated Boston College, it will completely change the way that I think about this team at that moment. But if we go up there, all you can ask, and I think I said this against LSU, is ask for a competitive football game that we win, where we look like we're playing a competent brand of football. See, when everybody was saying it looks different, I didn't know what you were talking about. It didn't look different. We were heavily penalized. We made stupid mistakes. We didn't do what we were doing the last 2 years. This looks different. I see guys mostly going, you may not win, but you're going in the direction you're supposed to go. That's important. That's a step in the right direction. We're running routes and you have some miscommunication, but you see a quarterback stepping in the pocket and launching it. You see a quarterback getting confident. You see running backs getting confident. You see defense stopping, like a defense literally everybody's ready. And it's cowardice at a certain point. You're ready to fire a defensive coordinator in the first half, and then you complain about it without really looking at what he did. What he's done against Wake Forest and Louisville is incredible.
Yeah.
He's literally pitched flawless halves as a DC. I'm not saying he's the second coming to Mickey Andrews. But what I'm saying is that you stopped Wake Forest outside of the first drive until a meaningless field goal that extended the lead. But you literally gave our offense every opportunity to win, and we just couldn't capitalize. That makes it a team loss. if we're able to go there and do this and our guys just believe, it's going to be incredible with this. Michael Pittman said it. If we just believe in ourselves, it's going to be incredible what we're going to be able to accomplish.
Absolutely.
That's what I saw in the spring. That's what I saw in the fall. That's what I saw in that game on the sidelines at Wake Forest in a loss. And as long as I'm seeing that, you're not going to see me be – and again, I don't think anybody was more critical than I've been over the last few years. But I'm looking at this like, yo, this is – I wish this would have happened last year. I wish this would have happened 2 years ago. But, but that's my thoughts. I think we win. I think we win convincingly, and I think everybody will be all smiles and Hallmark cards Sunday night. Early Sunday morning after the game.
Chip, I got about 4 minutes left. You got a score prediction?
Yes, I do. I'm going to go 34-21 FSU. And I'll say 34 because I'm going to give Fitzy 2 field goals.
Oh, all right.
This is where he comes back into his own.
Taylor, you don't have to give a score prediction unless you want to. If you're gonna pick NC State, don't you say a word on here?
Yeah, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, so I don't even want to go that route. So,
Taylor, let everybody know where they can follow you real quick as possible, so I can end these. Chip, if you don't mind, fall off, buddy. Let people know where you can find you real quick.
You can find me at Concord A50.
Taylor.
Yep, Norvell Central on Instagram, at Central Norvell on Twitter.
Thank you, sir. Go Noles. James, where can they find you?
At Big Game James _36 on Twitter and Instagram.
Y'all go check out what we've got going for the tailgate against Clemson. Go Noles. And I'll finish this up real quick. I got about 3 minutes left. See you soon. Everybody, I didn't let Taylor finish on giving a score prediction. He's been to NC State. He's been scarred by NC State. We haven't played well at NC State. Like he said, the last win we had at NC State was 2016. NC State does cause Florida State problems, regardless of how good or how bad they are in the season. We know that. I do want to tell everybody that I appreciate you coming and watching the show. I appreciate you listening to our opinions. We are an extremely critical group to Florida State. We're extremely passionate, and we're all fans of Florida State, if you couldn't tell. We love this university. We love all the athletes that are on this team. We really appreciate the support that we're getting here at SPEARATICS. The shirts are still for sale. Y'all have done a tremendous job of helping me out. 15% of every purchase is going toward the FSU athletes. And that's depending on whether they want to use it for hurricane relief for some of their family members, or if that's just NIL for them, however that looks. So I really do appreciate the support that y'all are giving me. And also on the tennis shoes and the slides, I appreciate the support that I'm getting from there as well. I love seeing that people want to wear the SPEARATICS name brand. Y'all are really showing how much, this group and how much this podcast means to everyone. I want to tell everybody that told me on the screening tonight that they loved me. I love you guys too. Y'all are great Noel fans. Y'all have a great one. And the Noles are going to win against NC State. Let's prove Taylor wrong. Y'all have a good one. And